everyone. Welcome once again to another edition of Under the Macroscope, Skybound Capital's weekly podcast on all things, or some things, macro. And a great pleasure to welcome back after a 2-week sabbatical when we discussed ESG investing with Josie Davis. We would say welcome back to Skybound Capital's chief strategist based in the UK office, Jabir Sadawala. And great to be speaking to somebody in the UK at this juncture, because the 19th of July is so-called Freedom Day, where supposedly restrictions post-COVID are lifted. Jabir, we're dying to hear your view on what this means, how it is going to be accepted and celebrated by people across the UK, but also what inference can be drawn on vaccination programs and subsequent lifting of restrictions for the rest of the world.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think this is going to be a really good test case, for how life coming out of lockdown progresses from here. I've been monitoring as I sort of come into the office, just passenger volumes, off peak and peak. They have picked up, there's no doubt, but without doubt, we're not talking about the same old crowded underground trains. If anybody who's traveled on the underground here, they'll know exactly what that feels like, even worse so during the summer, when it's nothing like that. I think what it means for the UK is that, first of all, tribute to their vaccination program. So in terms of people who have had a first vaccine, the numbers now are something like 80% or higher. And we know from all evidence that the first vaccine is incredibly effective, even against the variants. In terms of people who have had a second vaccine, it's at around 60-something%. So they are fully vaxxed. Herd immunity depends who you speak to. Some will say 70%. Anthony Fauci and co go as high as 85%. So we're somewhere in between. And what the first message that the government's sending out basically is, okay, we think we've done enough now in order to be able to start putting the economy first again. And also putting life and society and culture as we used to know it first again. It's an indication that people have done their bit. They've suffered enough, and at times it has felt like a bit of a suffering. And now we can open up. It doesn't mean we're out of the woods. Certainly doesn't. I don't think anyone in their right minds is arguing that. As you've probably seen, our rate of contraction is rising rapidly again, but you have to now look at that in context, and the context is hospitalizations and deaths, and those two, thankfully, so far are holding very steady. So what that's suggesting, not conclusively, but it's a strong suggestion, is that the link between contracting the virus and it becoming incredibly serious is now starting to be broken. So if it hadn't been for all the media attention around COVID, this, to all intents and purposes, would just be like another flu episode. That's really what it means. The numbers also that it's rising amongst is the younger population, and I very much hope, if I know the government's now trying to accelerate that vaccination program, and I very much hope that the young group, take it up quickly. In fact, they're now trying to even narrow the gap between first and second. So I sincerely hope this is the beginning of life going back to normal, where we don't have to sit there and end up Asian style wearing a mask, where we can actually see people's faces again, because that's what the culture is all about.
On the subject of culture, as the UK emerges from restrictions, do you predict, and obviously we can't hold you to this, but people's change in behavior and perhaps a new culture emerging in terms of how people react and respond and interact with each other?
Yeah, I definitely do. And this actually is what I fear. So let me just go back to the underground example just now. What I still notice on trains is that people will put their bags, their rucksack or whatever it is, on the seat next to them. Um, in essence, what they're really doing is they're sending out a message saying, please don't, leave a distance here, leave a gap. So that's an example of a kind of fear that's now set in. And that will have to be broken. It will have to be overcome. Um, but it actually goes into something even wider. I mean, there will always be people who are still afraid to come into London because of the perception that they have, or afraid to travel on the underground, or just generally afraid to go out in more populous areas. Um, I think the bigger issue for me, though, and where the UK really will be a test case, is what has this done to people's attitude to work? Because we've now spent pretty much the better part of a year working from home, whatever that means, and for a lot of people, working home environments are not conducive to working from home, but they've adapted. Um, and this, I think, is going to be the single biggest challenge. And I actually think underlying this delay in getting back to work, this is what's driving it. I think people have become used to a certain new type of lifestyle. So if I can actually jump into one point that I was going to talk about today, why has the labor market in America been so slow to pick up? I mean, I, for one, suggested, advocated that Q2 would see stellar employment numbers, averaging about 1 million a month. Well, we haven't hit that at all. In fact, the closest we came to it was in June, and even that was below 1 million. It's about 800 or 1,000. Um, and what we are seeing is the first bit of evidence that's come out based on a survey that was conducted, quite extensive survey, is that these savings that have built up over that period, which essentially has come out of taxpayers' money, um, is being used to stay at home longer, possibly under the pretext that I'm a bit afraid to go out because of the COVID scare. So now it's believed that with the amount of estimated savings that they have, the labor market actually will be delayed in terms of picking up, probably until autumn, or what the Americans call fall. So that makes sense to me, because when you look at the jobs wanted board, it's just clustered. I mean, there's hardly any more room to post any more jobs. Companies up and down the country, everywhere, from large cap to small cap, are all crying out for people. And in an era where we've gone rather to the right side of politics, the right wing side, where immigration has become tighter, that just compounds the issue. In the UK, having Brexited, um, fruit farmers, for instance, are struggling to find workers now. That will induce a whole generation of robotics, by the way, and that is happening. But that's going to take time to implement. So I think there has been a cultural change here where quietly and secretly, and this is very much my own view, I think a whole bunch of people have become used to a quieter lifestyle where they can stay at home, just nip out when they want to, and enjoy the luxuries of actually, just working from home where they are working from home, and just enjoying a more sort of social type of approach to life. And
and,
COVID is a very good cover.
and content perhaps with less disposable income.
Exactly. That's absolutely right. Because against that, they're not paying anything for travel costs. They are not paying extortionate prices for sandwiches in the center of town or city. And, you've been to London, you know what it costs for a sandwich here in Mayfair. It's not cheap. There are a lot of savings and they're weighing all this up. And so quality of life, which was always prevalent, has now become even more prevalent. I think this has been a stark reminder to them. And that will be a slowing effect. And perhaps to give them their dues, maybe this is what the Fed is actually secretly referring to when they say that they think the inflation is going to be transitory. That's why they want to wait and see. They are highly cognizant of the acute shortage in the labor market. They've never denied that. but maybe this is what they want to see. We know that, for instance, 25 predominantly Republican dominated states in America have already now begun the process of ending the assistance program. It will still take another week or so before that's fully implemented. But that will hopefully get people to now start thinking about what do we do when the money runs out. So no, these are serious issues which we don't know the answer to yet.
Yeah, and given what's going on in the labor market, how do you see this impacting certain specific sectors
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
of the market?
Well, as you know, over here summer is in full force now, and it's holiday season. And where do a lot of travelers go? And I'm not even just talking about Brits now. Typical destinations: Italy, Spain, Portugal, really big hotspots as destination targets. And we're going to see flights now starting to pick up. They are picking up. So it looks like getting to your destination won't be such a big issue. It will still require coordination though. And that I believe will come. Quick example there. So we have a traffic light system here in the UK, and most of these countries, in fact, all of the countries that I just mentioned, are on the amber list, which means now, interestingly, based on a rule change about a week ago or start of the week, if you come back from an amber list country, you no longer have to quarantine if you've been double vaxxed. Okay, you still need to be tested on day 2 and day 8 after your return, but you don't have to quarantine for 10 days at home. Unlike a red list country, sadly South Africa, for instance, whereby not only do I have to quarantine, but I have to do so in a government-appointed hotel, which is going to cost me a bomb, as you know. I mean, that's not cheap. But the amber list is a big list. So I think that's a huge relief. That means there are going to be a lot of people going there. However, what about sectors like hotels? There was a really interesting study done in Europe, focusing on Italy and to a lesser extent on Germany. Now, in Italy, 13%, 13% of its GDP comes from the tourism industry. Okay, hoteliers are struggling to find staff. And why? Because when you look at the profile of people who work there, particularly the younger group, they prefer to stay at home with their families. They're getting state assistance, and it's a handsome amount. They don't now have to pay the travel fares to come in, and they don't have to do those horrible jobs. Who wants to clean out rooms and washrooms and so on? And if anyone's been on an all-inclusive holiday where you've got these rowdy individuals, the state that they leave, things in, it's not pleasant. Meanwhile, if now, as we've seen, there's been a big shift to home deliveries, if you can be driving around delivering packages and parcels from the comfort of your own car or van, why wouldn't you? So what's the implication for a hotelier? That's the question that we now need to see. 30% of hoteliers in Germany, for instance, have just closed. They've decided not to open because they simply cannot get the staff. So if I was in the shoes of a hotelier, I've got two choices. I can either fold my business, or actually I've got three choices. I can pay people more, which has inflation implications, and God, you're going to have to pay them a lot more for doing such a really unpleasant job. Alternatively, you change your business model and you start to say, guys, look, I'm ever so sorry, but you're going to have to, you're responsible for your own rooms. But of course, bars and restaurants will still be open. And good luck on you. Let us know when you need new sheets and all of that. And by the way, there might be a surcharge, just as one pays on low-cost carriers. If you want a seat with extra room, you got to pay for it. And look how successful that's been. So I think any one of those is in the pipeline, and which way we go is just going to be fascinating.
I suppose it's going to be fascinating as well to see how quickly demand picks up for travel. And you're saying that the amber list makes it easier, and it's all going to be on the take up. I mean, it's basic economics in that travel sector, and hoteliers have had a particularly tough time of it, and we can only hope that, like you say, it's a word that I hated in 2020, pivoting. But there are going to be business models that need to pivot in the tourism sector as well,
Yeah.
and to get more creative to attract customers. Jabir, as always, great to catch up, and we wish you well for Freedom Day and everything that follows it in the UK. And I know that you'll be keeping a keen eye on the Springboks versus the British and Irish Lions. 3 tests series starting on Saturday. We know it's well known that you've got a Springboks in your household, so you've got a foot in both camps. So enjoy that, and thanks as always for your time. All our podcasts are available at Skybound Capital's website, www.skyboundcapital.com, or you can get them off Apple, Spotify, and the Google podcast platform for Android. You can also subscribe on any of those platforms. Until next time on Under the Microscope, have a great week.